Greetings, acolytes and lore junkies. Welcome to the archives. We are here yet again with our weekly Maul Shadow Lord review. This time we have Chapter 7 and Chapter 8, Call to the Oblivion and The Creeping Fear, respectively. I'm again highly honored to be joined with my good friend, the Archivist. Welcome back.
The honor's all mine, my friend. Let's get into it.
So, as always, there are going to be full spoilers in this review, so if you haven't seen the episodes, go do so before watching it, because we're going to break it all down. So, Chapter 7, Call to Oblivion. It begins with Devon, Maul, and the crew still on the run from the Empire. We get a little bit more characterization between Maul and Devon here, and something that I really appreciated is that Maul begins to lose his patience with the Padawan. He keeps trying to push her to embrace the darker nature, to show the fallibility of the Jedi, to show the fallibility of her own master and Master Daki, who in a lot of ways, although being a valiant, good Jedi, represents a lot of the shortcomings of their order, being passive and not willing and capable to fight the true enemy. And Maul and Devon actually briefly begin to come to blows because of Maul's sheer frustration and anger towards her being this very valuable and dangerous apprentice that he wants to craft. But as we learn a little bit more in The Creeping Fear and a little bit in Call to Oblivion, Maul's reason for wanting to partner with Devon goes more than just wanting a powerful ally. Maul really is seeking out that connection wherever he can get it. And when Maul loses people, it's not like when Sidious and other Sith Lords lose people. He cares. It affects him. And that is what I think Shadow Lord, especially with these last two episodes, have done really well, is humanize Darth Maul without making him extremely sympathetic, in the point where he's still very much a villain, but we understand where he's coming from, and he's clearly, in my mind, moved beyond the typical classifications of what I would call a Sith Lord.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see all of that going on there. I did kind of enjoy, because we've had this Maul who's had this veneer of patience and calculating mindset, but finally we're starting to see a couple of flashes of the old Maul, who is starting to lose his temper. He's losing his patience a little bit, and he's, kind of cracking, not necessarily cracking under the pressure, I guess I should say, but like time is kind of running out, and he's really needing to get Devon on his side of things sooner rather than later. I think it's also interesting that I noticed that Devon herself is showing more dark side tendencies too. Like, we're starting to see her ideals and character start to deteriorate. And like, she's like, for instance, when she's protecting Riley against the Empire, she gives into her anger towards the Empire for the first time and chooses that over protecting Riley, which was her mission. And we see her actively make that choice as she looks at him, looks at the Empire, and then growls and chooses to go fight by Maul's side, much to the dismay of Riley, who's left completely defenseless. So she compromises her Jedi ideals there, and then she shows more dark side when she, in like episode 9, literally carjacks a group of guys. I think I was watching that scene, and I was like, oh, it's kind of, at first my mind went, oh, it's kind of that classic Jedi Padawan versus some street thugs type deal. But then I had to catch myself, and I was like, actually, no, this is different. She was about to steal this car, and this guy was reasonably defending his property, and then she just beats him and his friends up and steals their car. She literally carjacks some people.
I didn't even think of it like that,
not.
But you're so right. She definitely is showing a lot more darker tendencies, and what she even disobeys her Jedi Master when they're on the run in episode 8.
Yeah, and she's like talking back to him way more.
She's definitely a fascinating character. I will be honest, I was hoping that her progression would be a little bit more rapid in season 1, but at the same time, I'm happy that maybe they're saving her actual Sith initiation or dark side apprenticeship for a later season. I hope that season 1 does not end with some sort of big climactic moment where she rejects Maul. I hope that this is a multi-season arc.
I think it would be interesting because if I'm seeing what the show's cooking here, if I'm starting to kind of smell the recipe, I want to know if they're trying to amend this idea that Jedi in past media seem to just fall to the dark side so quickly and then just, join the Sith just like that. And maybe Maul Shadowlord's trying to do more of a slow burn fall where we see her struggling between her ideals as a Jedi and yet knowing who Maul is, what he's capable of, and that his ideals are evil. And so she's not fully buying into what he's saying, but she is starting to adopt his mindset, whether she wants to or not. And she's even starting to adopt more brash mannerisms. She's talking back and disobeying. And so she's sort of falling behind her own back, even if she doesn't want to.
Absolutely. So now that we've talked about Devon a little bit, let's get into the Inquisitors. The 11th brother,
Yes.
who people online have been calling the Crow, which is a nickname that I really like, by the way.
Okay.
So the Crow,
that's cool.
the Crow and Marok working in tandem to take down Maul in the underlevels of Janix, which looks beautiful, by the way. They have that little foliage on the side, the waterfalls. Later on in the duel, you can see the steam come off of the water in the waterfalls. Visually, just this show is absolutely cooking. I can't even picture the animation getting any better. Another thing that I just want to point out is they have fully reverted back to the prequel era choreography, especially with characters like Maul. I know that when the sequel trilogy was coming out and a lot of the Disney Plus shows, they wanted lightsabers to feel heavy again and for them to have weight. Now, while that might be cool kind of in concept, in execution, it's not quite as epic as...
No, it looks bad.
Yeah, it does. As these like extremely skilled, powerful force wielders, they should be able to move with superhuman efficiency, and with you should feel the power differentiation between like them and someone that cannot touch the force. So I like that even the Inquisitors, who are relatively low level in terms of the scope of Star Wars lore, are shown to be proficient, which is a major criticism that you and I have both had. In Rebels, although the fifth brother and the seventh sister are nowhere near this level of the Crow and Marok, the fact that Ahsoka takes out the Crow in unarmed combat is a little bit annoying, I would say. You can strike that off as arrogance or him not knowing exactly what he was prepared for with Ahsoka until the very last moment and not giving her due credit. But I appreciate that Maul Shadowlord, which is obviously the show that we're reviewing now, we don't want to go back and just complain about other stuff, but I like that the Inquisitors, they come off as these pack hunters, as these predators. And I was rewatching the duel a few times with Maul and the Inquisitors, and you even pointed out in one of the scripts that one of them is serving primarily as the support while one will attack, and that role changes. Because the Inquisitors are outright offensive duelists, one of them will engage Maul, and as soon as an opening in the guard is presented and Maul turns to move against it, the other Inquisitor will intervene. And getting to see that work and having the Inquisitors be real threats was so satisfying. I was also really worried when they jumped off the platform that we were going to get the helicopter sabers again, and they just landed, which I was very grateful for.
I honestly think that Dave might be trying to get people to... He's kind of hoping people will forget about the helicopter sabers since it was so dogged on before. So I think that's why we haven't seen them do that, is because they're kind of hoping people won't remember that.
I like the spinning function of the Inquisitors more how they use it in Shadowlord, where it's almost like a distraction, insult, overwhelming. Like the Inquisitors do it to cut off escape vectors while mocking Maul. And they both do it when they say that the Emperor wants you dead and when they're closing in on him. I think that this is one of the best animated duels we've ever seen. Moving through that sort of cave-like area and Maul utilizing the
Yeah.
dark and just getting to see these ruthless fighters go at it. Maul's not holding back. His leg is obviously damaged, but they're all going out for blood. And I think that this is the highlight of the series for me, this duel between the three of them.
I want to follow your points and kind of go from A to C as you listed out, starting with the visuals. And the one thing that stood out to me the moment that I went, "Oh yeah," when I was sitting on the couch watching, was when the Inquisitors jump through the waterfall and you see the water steam sizzle off their lightsabers. It
Beautiful.
reminded me so distinctly of that moment in Gendy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, where Anakin and Ventress are on Yavin and the rain is like hissing off their lightsabers and
Ooh.
causing steam. And so that sort of callback with seeing lightsabers interact with water, which is something we don't see very often at all, really. It was just so satisfying. I loved it so much. And, I know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to their fighting style. Like you said, we did a script just today that we'll be posting here soon, analyzing this duel, why Maul lost, and like you say, it is those pack tactics. I mean, they're nasty with it. And we have seen Inquisitors try and be partially successful with it before. And it's been this thing where it always feels like the weaker Inquisitors are forced to work together, whereas the stronger ones can kind of strike off on their own. But this is the first time that we've seen two Inquisitors that we traditionally see being solo having to team up against Maul, and when two experienced and skilled Inquisitors actually team up, they're dangerous, really, really dangerous.
I got the sense that there was a lot of preparation between them before the duel. They had a very methodical approach to the way that they began engaging Maul. They don't just go at him at the same time. They had a few strategic retreats that I thought was really interesting. Because when Maul got them on the platform, first off, he got them away from his own enemies, but also it stopped them from being able to flank him very effectively. So when the Inquisitors jump away and they go into those caves, it really opens up brand new angles for them to go at Maul, which is what you need. It was sort of reminiscent to me in The Phantom Menace, where Maul is leading Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to an area where they can't escape. And I just love when Star Wars is a little bit more intelligent with their duels and there is a story going on within them. And that's when lightsaber duels are absolutely at their peak, when there are things going on internally with the characters, not just, swinging lightsabers at each other.
Did you notice the exchange of high ground? Whenever they were on the bridge and Maul had the advantage, he actually was dominating at the very first exchange. He was dominating them. Like you said, his flanks were covered so they couldn't get on either side of him, and he had the high ground and he pushed them back pretty good. And then at first the two Inquisitors retreated to the upper platform. Maul followed, then it switched. He ended up getting slipped and they ended up getting the high ground. That's when he jumped into the caves. So it was like they had to quickly establish even ground and get their opponents off of the high ground.
Yeah, I was very satisfied with this duel. I do think it makes a lot of sense that Maul's injured leg is the reason for why he lost, but also
the show makes that apparent, I think.
Yeah, over and over again, which I'm thankful for. It's not just the character shows up and there's no reason for why they're suddenly bested by another character. Also, man, it's just great to see someone like your protagonist in Maul and Star Wars struggle a little bit. They're not supposed to just excel immediately because they're the main character. Watching Maul go through it, especially in episode 8 when he's struggling to climb up that little rock wall and falls back down and he's filled with this anger that he can't even walk, and he's getting flashbacks to when he was had the spider legs, when he was on Lotho Minor. It's all so good. And I was reminded what it's like when these characters are put through hell and they come out with these full character arcs, which, moving on to episode 8, we get to see Maul refocus his hatred and aim it. And we were talking a little bit off recording, and you brought up that Maul's hatred for the Jedi really is beginning to wane, and the true enemy has revealed itself. And he even talks a little bit more with Devon in episode 7, how it's unfortunate in his mind that his master is still alive. But we get a few of those flashbacks. And I wanted to get your opinion on something. A lot of the discourse online is that in Legends, Maul was taken by Sidious at a much younger age. I don't know if an age is ever explicitly given in Legends, but I know in the comics he looks to be maybe 6 or 7. But now we know definitively he was taken by Sidious at the age of 14, which means that his tutelage under Sidious, what would that roughly only be, like 6 years? Isn't Maul supposed to be around 20 in the time of the Phantom Menace? Where I always took it as that he was taken to Mustafar as an extremely young child and trained there. So that's one area. What are your thoughts about that?
In the Plagueis novel, in the Plagueis novel, he was taken as an infant, actually.
Oh,
and he
even
was
younger.
raised by droids. Yeah, he was raised by droids on Mustafar until he was around toddler age. And then Sidious didn't even meet him until he was like... again, no exact age was given, but it's implied to be like 4 or 5. Like, Maul, in his journal, like his earliest memories are of, meeting and being scared by Sidious.
So how do you feel about the canon change of him being taken at a much older age?
To be quite honest, I am, at worst, I'm indifferent. Because I think it actually serves the story pretty well for him to have childhood memories of Savage, because then that makes their brotherhood going into the Clone Wars a bit more rich, because it's like this idea where they were separated and then finally reunited, and Maul has a much deeper connection with Savage than we really got to see in the Clone Wars, and I think that was something that even Sam Witwer said he wanted to explore. I saw interviews like leading up to this show where Sam behind the scenes had like started giving all these suggestions about where he wanted to see Maul's character go, and he had to be stopped. Like, somebody had to come up to him and be like, this isn't Maul's show. Like, these are great ideas, but it would take too many episodes, it would take too much runtime, and we have to just be realistic about where this runtime is going. So, we have all these ideas exploring Maul's relationship with Savage that kind of got backlogged and are now surfacing again. So, in terms of like the age, I don't really care. I think it actually works.
I'm a little bit different. I think that it is more impactful if Maul is taken as a very, very young child and raised exclusively with the idea of being a Sith Lord in mind, and not just like 6-7 years. Because now at this point, the majority of his life, when we reach the time of the Phantom Menace, has been without Sith tutelage. And I have always liked the idea that there is nothing within Maul except for the Sith way. And I guess you can still explain that Sidious breaks it out of him and maybe even tampers with his memories a little bit with some of the dark side. But I always liked the idea of Maul being a complete victim, a blank slate with no past, and then is purely indoctrinated. And that has always made me feel like not only was his childhood robbed from him, but his entire identity was as well. And I realize that in the course of the show that you sort of lose that connection with Savage Opress, but I always interpreted it as this was something that Maul never had, that he always wanted. He always wanted a relationship with his brother. But now canon has changed it to where they had that relationship, but that it was robbed. So I guess it's sort of like pick which side you like more. This is not one of those cases where it's like blow up the whole show because they changed this little thing that I don't like. This is very minute. But at the same time, I do like the idea of Maul being a victim right off of the rip. But again, I acknowledge that you lose a lot of that impact with Savage much later. What did you think of seeing the little vision of Maul looking into the water and seeing his younger self before he was corrupted by the Sith and before his whole identity was taken from him?
That scene that actually almost made me cry. I'm not gonna lie. I actually felt myself getting misty eyed, because obviously in like all sorts of therapy talk, there's this whole idea of you know connecting with your inner child, or more like making peace. Like for people who are victims of abuse, there's this idea where they have to make peace with their inner child that was unable to defend themselves. And it was like he looks in the water and he sees his younger self, and it broke my heart whenever his younger self apologized to his older self and was like, I'm sorry for putting us through this by going with Sidious instead of listening to Savage. And like Maul has to like comfort his younger self, and he like actually cries like, oh my gosh, whoever wrote that absolutely cooked.
Yeah,
um
I think so too.
and kind of rolling it back a little bit to like the sand tunnel visions, and what you were talking about like Maul redirecting his hatred. I noticed something really strange that I don't think the show's going to explore, at least not for a while. But in his visions, he heard like his death on Naboo. I say death, defeat on Naboo, and he hears Obi-Wan's voice. And then when he looks up and he says, Kenobi? And it's like soft and almost hopeful, like he's like being tormented by the voice of Sidious, and then he hears the voice of his old rival, and he sounds like almost hopeful as he looks up, like looking up for for Obi-Wan. And I was like, am I interpreting that wrong? But that's so interesting.
Yeah, I think we're going to get to see the evolution of that as the series goes on, where he will realize that Sidious is out of his grasp. And I think it will be a little bit tragic because Maul is this extremely tragic character in Rebels who does make the wrong decision. But these Shadow Lord episodes give us an inkling that he is capable deep down of changing, and maybe not necessarily looking at Obi-Wan as the pure embodiment of his failure, and rather directing that towards his master. But the way that Maul works and the way that the character ends is that hatred will again consume him, and Obi-Wan will
Yeah,
become the object of his revenge. So it adds an even
he'll
more
have nothing
tragic
left.
layer. Exactly. He's got nothing left. He's not capable of overthrowing Sidious. Something happens, which I hope is Darth Vader. And he realizes that Sidious is infinitely beyond his grasp, so he must target his hatred that has fully consumed him into Obi-Wan. That is not the correct path, and I think that this episode is illustrating that, which is just adding even more layers to Maul, which Shadow Lord and Sam Witwer and the whole crew behind even Rebels and the Clone Wars, they've done such a good job at making
Oh
Darth
heck
Maul
yeah.
this fascinating character. Because although he is cool in The Phantom Menace, he is just there for somebody to duel at the end. His design is iconic, but now Maul as a character has become truly exceptional, and Shadow Lord is just building upon that.
Man, put these writers in charge of a Dooku show, man.
Oh
I
my
know we have the
gosh.
novel, I know we have Tales of the Jedi, but dude, give us a Dooku show in this style.
That would
Wow.
be off the hook. That would be insane. So, what do you give your final score of these other two, of episode 7 and episode 8?
Let's see. Mm, episode 7, I'd probably do a 8.5 out of 10. I probably would give it like a 9, but I think I'd actually give them both around either an 8 or an 8.5. I think the only reason I deduct points is I really liked seeing like our heroes, the Jedi and Captain Lawson, in other episodes. They never felt obstructive to me.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first episode where I felt that they overstayed their welcome just a little bit too long. And I only say that because the Maul stuff was so interesting and so engaging that every time it would flash back to the heroes, I was like, no, I want to know what happens with Maul. I want to go back to that. So there were a couple of times where I felt a little bit of frustration, and that's the only reason I would deduct points. But overall, I think this show just keeps getting better.
I think so too. I think the next 2 episodes are going to be great. And I'm glad that we
Yeah.
finally got to sit with Maul alone a little bit. He's not just aura
Me
farming,
too.
which, don't get me wrong, I love when Maul aura farms. Who doesn't? But
Yeah.
now getting to see him get real characterization, these last 2 episodes are sort of like, okay, so this was the thesis of Shadow Lord. This is what is going on behind the scenes with Maul internally, which they have handled so well. I really hope that we get more seasons of Shadow Lord, and like you're saying, I really hope that they expound upon other characters like Dooku. That would be a dream. The only thing I would like more than that would be a Luke Skywalker NJO series, and hopefully one day we'll get it.
That's it.
In terms of my scores, I'm gonna give episode 7 like a 9 out of 10.
Nice.
It's visually great. I think it's got the best action of the whole series. Getting that duel with Maul versus the Inquisitors, having the Inquisitors actually be threatening, it was phenomenal. And for episode 8, I'll probably give it like an 8.5 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Everything with Maul in that episode is an absolute 10 out of 10. But if I'm going to offer a little bit of a criticism, the season sometimes just feels like an endless chase scene, and it was a little bit of like, okay, Riley got captured, and now they're rescuing Riley, and now we're right back where we started when episode 7 began. You know what I mean? So
Okay, I can see that, yeah.
So while it's extremely
chasing was
entertaining, it is not revolutionary. And I get it. Like, you can't have Maul going through his own like mental breakdown and then also have more talking from your other characters. No, the audience expects action, and I totally get that. I just wish maybe, there was a little bit more Inquisitor action going on. Maybe we got a little bit of a darker moment with Devon that wasn't played so much as like, oh, look, she's a badass, but more like a really soft, dark moment where she makes a decision that's really clear that Maul is influencing her. And maybe they're saving that for the final 2 episodes. That would not shock me at all.
I think so, probably. Yeah.
Well, guys, leave in the comments down below. What did you think of Maul Shadow Lord episodes 7 and 8? Did you think that they cooked like we did, or are you disappointed? We would love to hear what you have to say in the comments down below, and we will see you guys next week for the finale. May the Force be with you.
See you next time.